The marketplace was loud, filled with voices, smells, and colors. Merchants shouted about their goods, children laughed and ran between stalls, and buyers argued over prices. But in the center of the square, a silence hung like a shadow. Everyone avoided looking too long at the cage, yet no one could truly look away. Inside the cage sat a girl, or something that looked like a girl. Her skin shimmered faintly, like moonlight on water, and her eyes glowed in the dim light. Her arms were wrapped in iron chains, her ankles bound so tightly that her skin was bruised. The crowd whispered one word again and again: monster. Mothers pulled their children closer when they passed the cage. Old men muttered curses under their breath. Traders shook their heads, saying it was foolish to even keep her alive. And yet, the cage remained, guarded by soldiers with sharp spears. The girl did not speak. She lowered her head, dark hair falling across her face. But she heard every word, felt every hateful glance. Her heart had long stopped hoping for kindness. The auctioneer stood on a wooden platform, his voice rough and powerful. "Behold the creature," he shouted, pointing at the cage. "She is dangerous, cursed, and unnatural, yet strong and valuable to those who dare." His words echoed, but no hand rose to make an offer. People laughed nervously. Others spat on the ground. No one wanted her. No one trusted her. She was not a person in their eyes, only a beast dressed in human form. And then, through the noise and scorn, a man stepped forward. He was not tall, not dressed in gold or silk. His clothes were worn, his boots dusty from travel. He looked like any other stranger passing through. Yet when his eyes met hers, he did not look away. For a moment, the girl froze. There was something different in the way he looked at her. Not fear, not hatred, not disgust, something else. It made her chest tighten, as if a forgotten memory stirred. The auctioneer laughed at him. "You, traveler, do you not hear what she is? A monster? A curse?" But the man's gaze did not waver. He stepped closer to the platform, his hand resting calmly on his belt. The crowd shouted warnings. "Don't touch her. She will kill you in your sleep. She is not human." The words filled the air like knives, but he did not flinch. Instead, he spoke, his voice steady. "I'll take her." Gasps rippled through the marketplace. The auctioneer blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. You want that?" he asked. The man nodded, his expression calm but firm. Chains rattled as the girl lifted her head for the first time, her glowing eyes locked on his face. Why would anyone choose her? Was this some cruel trick, a new way to torment her? The auctioneer raised his hammer. "Sold," he declared, his voice trembling with disbelief. The guards moved to unlock the cage, though their hands shook. The crowd murmured, some fearful, some angry, some eager to see disaster. The man walked forward as the cage door creaked open. The girl pressed herself back against the wall of the cage, expecting blows, expecting fire, expecting pain. But instead, he held out his hand, palm open, not forcing, not demanding, simply waiting. She stared at it, her chains heavy, her heart racing. This was not how humans acted toward her. She had been kicked, beaten, mocked, but never offered a hand. Her throat tightened, words trapped inside her chest. The silence was thick. The marketplace, watching every breath. Finally, with a trembling motion, she reached out. Her chained wrist brushed against his rough hand. He closed his fingers gently around hers, firm but not cruel. A shock ran through her, not of pain, but of warmth. It was strange, frightening, yet comforting. Something she had not felt in a very long time. Something she thought she would never feel again. The crowd erupted in shouts. "Fool! Dead man! He'll regret it." But the man ignored them all. He turned to her and whispered words no one else heard. "You're safe now." Her breath caught. safe. The word echoed in her mind like a forgotten dream. Could it be true? Or was this only the beginning of a crueler fate? The square was still buzzing after the strange man had taken the chained girl's hand. Whispers spread through the marketplace like fire through dry grass. No one could believe it. No one could understand. Why would a human choose a monster? The auctioneer shook his head, his face pale with unease. He had seen countless sales, but never one like this. Usually, slaves were bought with loud cheers, fierce bidding, and heavy coins. But here, silence lingered, heavy and sharp. The guards exchanged worried glances. Even they feared to touch her chains too long. Yet this man stood calm, steady, as if the weight of the world did not bother him. The girl lowered her eyes again, confusion swirling inside her. She had seen many men before, some cruel, some greedy, some curious. But this one did not fit any shape she knew. His eyes did not pierce her like knives. His touch did not burn. Still, she waited. For she had learned long ago that kindness was only a mask before cruelty. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Payment, traveler," he demanded. His voice cracked slightly, betraying his unease. The man pulled out a worn pouch and dropped coins into the merchant's trembling hand. The sound of metal hitting would echoed sharply. It felt like a bell tolling at the start of something dangerous. The deal was done, yet no one clapped, no one cheered. Instead, no crowd began to mutter darker things. He will regret this. She will kill him. The curse will spread. The words were daggers thrown into the air, and the girl felt each one strike her chest. The man ignored them all. He bent slightly and whispered near her ear. "Stand." His voice was calm, but there was no cruelty in it. The guards unshackled her legs and pushed her forward roughly. She stumbled, but did not fall. The man caught her arm gently before she could crash to the ground. That small act froze her heart. Why would he catch her when he could let her break? Step by step, they walked through the marketplace. The crowd parted as if death itself passed by. Children hid behind their mothers. Men spat on the ground to ward off evil. Women whispered prayers under their breath. The girl kept her head bowed. The chains clinked with every movement, heavy and loud. Her skin burned under their stares. The man walked beside her without fear. Every step of his boots was firm, steady, unshaken. The path out of the square seemed longer than ever. The whispers grew quieter, then louder again. Some shouted insults, some shouted warnings, but none dared to step in front of him. It was as if his steady walk carved a path no one else wished to touch. At the edge of the square, a boy threw a stone. It struck the cage marks on her arm, and she flinched. The crowd laughed cruelly. But the man stopped, turning his head slowly. His gaze found the boy, sharp and cold. The laughter died instantly. Silence falling heavy. The boy dropped his next stone, trembling, and ran back into the crowd. The man said nothing, only turned back to the girl and continued walking. She stared at him in disbelief. Not because he had scared the boy, but because he had cared enough to stop. No one had ever cared if she was struck. No one had ever seen her pain as something real. Her chest felt strange, tight, as if something long asleep stirred. The city gates stood tall ahead. Beyond them lay the unknown, perhaps freedom, perhaps death. The girl's chains dragged, slowing her steps, but he did not rush her. He walked at her pace, never pulling, never forcing. Still, fear gnawed at her. What would he do when they reached his home? Would he chain her again in secret? Would he test her, hurt her, break her in ways the others had only imagined? Her thoughts spun like a storm, tearing at the fragile hope that had started to grow. When they finally reached the gates, the guards stopped them. "Traveler," one barked, pointing at the girl. "You cannot take that thing beyond the city." She is cursed. She will bring death to us all. The man stood tall, his eyes steady. She belongs to me now, he replied firmly. She will leave with me. The guards shifted uneasily. Gripping their spears for a long moment, it seemed they might refuse. The girl's heart pounded. If they stopped him, they would drag her back to the cage, back to the endless stairs, the endless chains, back to being nothing but a monster. But the man did not flinch. His silence was stronger than shouting. His gaze was steady, unbroken. Finally, the guards stepped aside, their eyes lowered. No one dared block him. The heavy gates creaked open. The noise rolled like thunder. Shaking the girl's chest, she stepped through, still chained, still uncertain. But the world outside felt different, wider. For the first time in years, she was outside the cage. She turned her head slightly, just enough to glance at the man. Walking beside her, her lips parted, but no words came. How could she ask the questions burning in her heart? Why did you buy me? Why do you not hate me? What are you planning? The road stretched ahead, long and silent. Her steps were heavy, her thoughts heavier, and yet, as the gates closed behind them, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Fear of the future, yes, but also something dangerously close to hope. The man's voice broke the silence at last. From now on, he said quietly, "You are no one's monster." Her breath caught. No one's monster. The words lit a fire inside her chest, bright, fragile, and terrifying, because deep down she wondered, could it truly be possible? The fire burned low, its glow flickering weakly in the night. The man sat against the tree, his breathing rough. His hand pressed against the cut on his arm. Blood seeped between his fingers, staining his sleeve, dark and heavy. The girl sat. A few feet away, chains rattling as her hands shook. She had seen wounds before, but never like this. She had never cared before either. Yet now her chest felt tight. Her heart whispered a single thought she tried to ignore. If he dies, I will be alone again. The man opened his eyes, his voice low but calm. It's not too deep, he muttered. Though his face betrayed the pain, he tried to adjust the cloth around his arm, but his fingers trembled. The girl leaned forward, her voice trembling. You fought for me." The words felt strange on her tongue, like they didn't belong to her. He gave a faint smile, though it was tired and heavy. "You're worth fighting for." Her breath caught, her eyes wide. No one had ever said those words to her ever. They had called her curse, beast, abomination, but never worth. Tears stung her eyes, blurring her vision. Her chained hands hovered uncertainly before her. She wanted to help, but didn't know how. Her touch had always brought fear, not comfort. Her mind flashed back to the fight. When her fingers brushed his wound, there had been a light, a glow that had shocked her to her core. Had that been real? Or just her desperate mind? The man shifted. Groaning quietly, the sound cut through her hesitation like a blade. She moved closer, her chains dragging over the dirt. "Don't," he whispered weakly. "You'll hurt yourself." But she ignored the warning. Pressing her hand gently against his wound, heat rushed through her palm, startling her. It was as if fire and water both lived inside her skin. The glow returned, faint at first, then stronger. The man inhaled sharply, the pain in his face easing. His blood slowed, the torn skin knitting together as the glow spread. The girl gasped, her own body trembling with the effort. She pulled back suddenly, staring at her hands in shock. The glow faded, leaving only her pale fingers and trembling arms. But the wound was smaller now, no longer gushing. The man looked at her, eyes wide. "You?" he whispered. She shook her head quickly, terrified. "I didn't mean." I don't know how her voice cracked, breaking under the weight of fear. Would he call her monster now? Would he see her as cursed again? But he didn't. He only touched his arm, testing the wound. Then he looked at her with something unexpected gratitude. "You saved me," he said softly. The words pierced deeper than chains ever had. Her chest ached, her tears spilling freely now. "I'm not supposed to save," she whispered, her voice cracked. The old memories of screams and fire twisting inside her. They said, "I only bring death." He shook his head slowly. They were wrong. Silence fell between them, broken only by the crackle of fire and the distant cry of an owl. For the first time in years, the girl felt something rise inside her, not fear, hatred, but hope. Fragile and trembling, the man leaned his head back, closing his eyes. "You should rest," he murmured. She wanted to argue, to ask questions. But exhaustion pressed down on her, heavier than her chains. Her eyes closed against her will, and she drifted into uneasy dreams. When dawn came, the world was quiet. The fire had died to ashes, and the forest shimmered with morning light. The man was already awake. Adjusting the bandage on his arm, the girl stirred. Sitting up slowly, her body stiff, she blinked at him. Unsure if the night before had been real, but his eyes met hers, calm and steady. "You healed me," he said simply. Her chest tightened, shame and pride clashing inside her eye. "Don't understand it," she admitted. He nodded, as if he understood more than she did. They packed their things, the man lifting his bag despite his wound. The girl followed, her chains clinking with each step. The road stretched ahead once more, but it felt different now. She was not just a monster in chains anymore. There was something inside hers, something even she didn't know. They walked in silence for hours, the world wide and open. The girl felt eyes on her, though she saw no one. The air grew heavy, tense, as if danger walked close behind. And then she saw them, figures in armor, blocking the road ahead. Soldiers, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. Her heart stopped, dread sinking into her bones. The leader stepped forward, his voice sharp and commanding. "Traveler," he called, pointing directly at her. "You carry a monster, hand her over." The man's jaw tightened, his hand resting near his belt. "She is mine," he said firmly. The soldiers laughed harshly, their voices cruel. "She is not yours. She is a threat to every world. Give her to us, or you will die beside her." The girl's blood ran cold. This was worse than shadows in the night. This was the law, the chain of power she could not escape. She looked at the man, her heart pounding. Would he give her up now, to save himself? The soldiers raised their weapons, the air heavy with violence. The girl's chest tightened painfully. Her voice stuck in her throat. And as the silence stretched thin, one thought thundered in her mind. "This time, he cannot protect me." The soldiers stood firm, their armor shining in the morning light. Each weapon pointed directly at the girl, their eyes cold. The leader's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Hand her over, human, or your blood will join hers on the ground." The girl froze, chains heavy around her wrists. Her breath came fast, fear spreading through her like poison. She had seen this before, faces twisted with hatred. She knew what came next: cages, whips, fire, screams. Her legs shook, and she whispered, He will give me to them, he must." But the man did not move. His body was tense, his jaw clenched tight. Slowly, he stepped forward, standing between her and the soldiers. His hand rested on the hilt of his blade. "You will not take her," he said, his voice steady. "She is not a monster." The soldiers laughed, cruel and mocking. The leader sneered, raising his spear. "Not a monster? She destroyed villages, killed without mercy. Do you think your words will wash away her crimes?" The girl's chest tightened with shame. The memories rose, unbidden flames, swallowing homes. Screams piercing the night. Her hands shook as if the blood of the past still clung to them. Tears burned her eyes. Maybe they are right, she thought. Maybe I am cursed, but the man did not flinch. She is not what you think, he said firmly. She saved me if she were only death. I would not be standing here now. For a moment, silence fell, broken only by the rustle of leaves in the wind. The soldiers shifted, uncertain, but the leader snarled, "Lies, all lies. Her kind cannot change." He raised his arm, giving the signal to attack. The girl gasped, her heart slamming against her ribs. The soldiers stepped forward, weapons gleaming. The man drew his sword with a sharp ring of steel. His stance was firm, though his wound still pained him. He whispered over his shoulder, "Run when I tell you." But the girl shook her head desperately. "No, if I leave, they will kill you." He didn't reply, his eyes fixed on the soldiers. The first clash came like thunder, steel against steel. The sound echoed through the forest. The man fought with skill, his blade striking fast. But there were too many, and they circled him like wolves. The girl watched in horror, chains dragging as she stumbled closer. She wanted to help, but fear rooted her in place. One soldier's spear grazed the man's side. He staggered, blood seeping through his shirt again. Her hands trembled, remembering the glow from the night. Before, she pressed them together, whispering to herself, "Not a curse. Please, not a curse." Suddenly, a soldier lunged toward her, his sword raised, his eyes full of hatred. Her instincts screamed. She raised her chained hands. A blast of light burst from her palms. Blinding and fierce, the soldier cried out. Thrown backward into the dirt, everyone froze. The soldier stared at her with wide eyes. The man turned, breathless, shocked, but alive. The glow faded from her hands, leaving only shaking fingers and wide, tear-filled eyes. I didn't mean," she whispered, her voice breaking. The leader snarled in rage. "Do you see? Power like that cannot be allowed to exist. She is a weapon, nothing more. End her now." The soldiers rushed again, fury in their movements. The man pushed himself forward, his blade flashing desperately. But the girl no longer cowered. The power inside her stirred again, wild and untrained. Her hands glowed once more, the light spreading around her like a shield. Arrows shattered against it. Spears glanced away. She gasped. Trembling with the effort, the energy burned through her veins, both terrifying and alive. The soldiers faltered, fear flickering in their eyes. The man seized the moment, his sword cutting a path through their line. "Now," he shouted, grabbing her wrist. Together they ran, crashing into the trees, chains rattling with every step. The forest swallowed them, branches clawing at their clothes. The girl's breath came in ragged gasps, the glow fading from her skin. Behind them, angry shouts echoed as the soldiers gave chase, but the forest was thick, and the shadows offered cover. They stumbled to a small clearing, both collapsing to the ground. The man's chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. He looked at her, sweat on his brow. "You saved us both," he said softly. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what I am. I don't know if I am life or death." Her voice broke, the words barely escaping her throat. "But I don't want to be a monster anymore." The man reached out, gripping her shoulder firmly. "You are not a monster," he said. "You are more than what they call you, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise." The road outside the city stretched wide and endless. Dust rose with each step, carried by the wind. The marketplace noise faded behind them, replaced by the quiet hum of insects and the distant call of birds. The world felt bigger here, but the girl's chains made it smaller with every dragging sound. The man walked beside her in silence. His pace was steady, never too fast, never too slow. Sometimes he glanced at her, but his gaze was calm, not piercing, not cruel. She wondered why he did not look at her the way others did, with fear or disgust. Her wrists ached where the iron rubbed against her skin. The cuffs had bitten deep, over the years, leaving scars that told stories no one wanted to hear. She kept her eyes low, afraid of what she might see in his face if she dared to look too long. At last, he spoke, his voice low but clear. "Are you hungry?" The question startled her. No one had ever asked that before. Food was always thrown at her like scraps for a beast. She hesitated, unsure if it was a trick. "Yes," she whispered, the word weak, almost lost in the wind. He nodded, as if her answer was enough. They stopped by a fallen tree at the side of the road. He pulled out a small pouch from his pack and handed her bread. Her hands trembled as she reached for it, expecting him to snatch it back or laugh. But he only waited, quiet and patient. She bit into the bread, the taste dry but real. Tears stung. Her eyes, not from hunger, but from the strange weight of kindness. The man ate in silence, watching the horizon. The girl kept her gaze on the ground, afraid that if she looked at him, she might find cruelty hiding there. Yet the longer she sat beside him, the harder it was to believe he meant harm. When the bread was gone, they continued walking. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in soft colors. The road grew quieter. But the girl's thoughts were loud. Why had he bought her? What did he want? No one chose a monster without reason. As the shadows stretched long, the man finally spoke again. "You can rest soon," he said. "There's a place ahead where the road bends, a safe spot." She blinked at him, unsure if she had heard right. A safe spot for her. The words felt impossible. They reached a cluster of trees where the road curved. The man set down his pack, gathering wood for a fire. The girl stood uncertainly, the chains clinking. She expected him to tie her to a tree, to guard her like a prisoner. But he only said, "Sit. You must be tired." She lowered herself onto the grass, her eyes never leaving him. Every move he made was strange, too gentle, too ordinary. The fire crackled to life. Warm against the cool night air, she hugged her knees, trying to understand when the stars began to appear. Her body grew heavy with exhaustion, but fear kept her awake. What if this was the moment his mask slipped? What if he struck when she was weakest? The man lay back against the tree, closing his eyes. "You can sleep," he said simply. No command, no threat, just words. She stared at him, stunned. Sleep had always been dangerous. Sleep meant waking to pain, but something in his calm voice made her chest ache. She lay down slowly, her chains cold against her skin, her eyes closed, though her mind fought against it. The night was still, the fire's glow soft, for the first time in years. Her dreams came not as nightmares, but as shadows of peace. Then her eyes snapped open. A sound moved through the darkness. Soft but sharp footsteps, slow and careful. Coming closer, the man stirred instantly, his hand reaching for the small blade at his belt. The girl froze, fear rising in her throat. Shadows shifted beyond the firelight. More than one figure moved there, hidden among the trees. The man's eyes narrowed, his voice low. "Stay behind me." The girl's heart pounded. Were these thieves, hunters, or something worse? Her chains rattled as she shifted closer to him. For the first time, she wanted the safety of his shadow. The firelight flickered, catching the edge of a blade in the dark. The figures stepped forward, 3 of them, faces hidden under hoods. One pointed at her, his voice dripping with venom. "Give us the monster." The girl's breath caught. Her heart screamed that this was the end, that no human would fight for her. Not truly, but the man stepped forward, blocking her with his body. His blade gleamed in the firelight as his voice cut sharp through the night. "No." The shadows paused, shocked by the single word. The girl's chains trembled as her hands shook for the first time in her life. Someone had chosen to stand between her and danger, and as the figure circled the fire, she realized something terrifying. This man might actually fight for her. The night was heavy, the firelight flickering against the dark trees. 3 hooded figures stepped closer, their shadows stretching long across the ground. The girl's chains rattled as she pulled back, her heart hammering, but the man did not move from his place in front of her. The tallest stranger raised his blade, his voice sharp. "She is cursed, she is dangerous. She must be destroyed." The girl trembled, the words cutting deeper than steel. She had heard them 1,000 times before, but tonight they felt heavier. The man tightened his grip on his knife, his stance strong. "She is mine," he said firmly. "You will not touch her." The strangers laughed, their voices harsh and cruel. "A fool," one spat, "a man protecting a beast." The first attacker lunged forward, steel flashing. In the firelight, the man moved quickly, blocking the strike with his knife. The clash rang out sharp, echoing through the quiet night. The girl gasped, clutching her chains as if they could shield her. The second attacker circled, aiming for the girl, her breath caught, terror freezing her in place. But the man spun, kicking dirt into the stranger's eyes before he could strike. "Stay back." The man shouted to her, his voice like iron. She could only nod, her voice locked away by fear. The fight grew fierce, sparks flying as steel met steel. The man fought with skill, but the strangers were many. One cut grazed his arm, drawing blood. The sight of red made the girl's stomach twist. She wanted to look away, but her eyes could not leave him. Why was he fighting for her? Why was he bleeding for her? She had never been worth protecting, never worth saving. The tallest attacker sneered. Pressing forward with a heavy swing, the man staggered but pushed back, his blade flashing in the firelight. For a moment, the girl thought he might fall. Her chains rattled as she crawled closer without thinking. Her heart screamed that she had to do something, anything. The third attacker slipped behind, moving like a shadow. He raised his dagger toward the man's back. The girl's eyes widened, panic seizing her without thinking. She shouted, her voice breaking the night, "Behind you?" The man twisted just in time, his blade slashing upward. The hidden attacker cried out, stumbling back into the firelight. The girl's chest heaved, her heart racing. For the first time, her voice had saved someone instead of bringing scorn. The fight dragged on, the man's strength tested with each strike. Blood dripped from his cut, staining his sleeve. The girl's eyes burned with tears she hadn't shed in years. She had seen humans fall before, but never for her, and it broke something inside her. The tallest attacker growled in frustration. Enough of this, kill him and take the monster. He lunged again, faster this time. The man blocked, but the force drove him to one knee, his teeth clenched, his arms shaking under the pressure. The girl's chains rattled violently as she moved. Her instincts screamed to run, but her heart screamed louder. She reached forward, her chained hands brushing his bleeding arm. The moment her skin touched his wound, something strange happened. A faint glow sparked where their skin met. The warmth rushed through her body, shocking her. The man gasped, the pain in his arm easing for a heartbeat. The glow faded just as quickly, leaving both of them stunned. She pulled back in fear, staring at her hands. Had she done that? Had her cursed blood healed instead of harmed? The man's eyes flicked toward her, filled with something she had never seen before: trust. The attackers hesitated, their eyes narrowing as if they had seen the glow too. Whispers hissed between them. "She is dangerous. She is worse." Then we thought their fear grew, mixing with their hatred. The man took the chance. Shoving the tallest attacker back with a sudden strike, he rose to his feet, blood still dripping but his stance unbroken. The fire crackled behind him, his shadow stretching wide. "You will not touch her," he said again. his voice stronger than before. The attackers snarled but began to back away. Fear flickered in their movements now. They muttered curses as they disappeared into the trees, their blades vanishing into the dark. The night grew still once more. Only the fire and the girl's heavy breaths filling the silence. The man lowered his blade, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. The girl stared at him, her mind a storm of confusion. He was bleeding, yet he had stood between her and death. He had risked everything for her. Why? She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her throat ached with the questions she could not ask. Finally, she whispered one broken word. Why? The man met her eyes, his gaze steady. Because you're not a monster, he said simply. Then, his legs buckled slightly, his hand pressing against his wound. The girl's heart dropped. Terror rushing back stronger than before. The attackers were gone for now, but the man was hurt, bleeding in the dark, and she realized with a sharp, frightening clarity, if he fell, she would be alone again. Chained and hunted, her hands shook as she reached toward him, and in that moment one thought consumed her. She could not let him die. Her heart ached at his words, fragile hope flickering once more. But before she could reply, the crack of branches came from the trees behind them. The soldiers were still hunting, closer than ever. The man tightened his grip on his sword, his eyes sharp. They won't stop, not until they have you. The girl's breath hitched. The weight of destiny pressed heavy on her, and for the first time, she asked herself a question she had always feared: if I have power, then what am I meant to do with it? The forest was alive with sound. Birds burst from the trees, startled by the clash of men and steel far behind. The man pulled the girl through the undergrowth, their steps uneven, their breath harsh, the chains on her wrists cut into her skin, leaving red marks. But she did not slow. Behind them, the voices of soldiers echoed. Find them. One roared, they cannot escape. Another shouted. Every sound of snapping twigs made her heart leap. Every breath of wind felt like a hand reaching to drag her back into the dark. The man stopped suddenly, pressing her against a large tree. He raised a finger to his lips, his eyes sharp. The girl held her breath, trembling through the trees. Shadows moved armored, figures scanning, blades ready. They were close, far too close. The man's grip tightened on her arm. We move left, he whispered. But before he could step forward, one soldier turned, his eyes locked onto them. There. He shouted. Steel clashed again, cries filling the air. The man shoved the girl behind him, his sword flashing in the dim light. The soldier rushed, and the two blades met with a ringing crack. The man gritted his teeth, pushing forward. But more soldiers poured through the trees. Their numbers growing, the girl's hands shook, the memory of the glow haunting her skin. She wanted to call it again, but fear tangled with her thoughts. One soldier lunged at her, his spear grazing her arm. Pain seared through her, sharp and hot. Her cry cut the air, and something inside her broke loose. Her vision blurred with light, her chains rattling violently. Power surged outward in a wave. The ground trembled, leaves tore from branches. The soldiers stumbled back, their cries filled with fear. The man shielded his face from the light. When it faded, the clearing was changed. Soldiers lay scattered, groaning in pain, weapons broken, and in the center stood the girl, her eyes glowing faintly. Her chest heaving, she looked at her hands in horror. What did I do? She whispered. The man stared at her, breathless. You protected us, he said, but her tears spilled freely. No. It felt like something else, something too big. Before he could answer, the ground beneath them shifted. The roots of the trees moved, as if alive. Curling around the fallen soldiers, the forest groaned, ancient and powerful. The man stepped. Back, his sword raised cautiously. The girl clung to him, fear returning. "What is happening?" A voice echoed, deep and calm, not from one direction, but from everywhere. "She is awakening," it said. The girl's heart nearly stopped, her eyes wide. Who's there?" The roots shifted again, and from the shadows of the great trees, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in leaves and bark. Its face hidden beneath a hood of vines. Its presence filled the clearing with silence. The soldiers who had tried to rise froze in terror, their bodies bound by roots. The man gripped his sword tightly, stepping in front of the girl. "Stay back," he warned. But the figure only raised a hand. "There is no need for steel, human. I have watched her since the day she was cursed." The girl's breath caught, her chains rattling as she stumbled forward. You know what I am?" The figure nodded slowly. "You are not monster, child. You are vessel." The word struck her like lightning. Her knees weakened. "Vessel. For what?" The figure's voice was low, carrying the weight of centuries. "For a power older than your world. A power they fear, because they cannot control it. That is why they call you monster. Not because of what you are, but because of what you could become." The girl shook her head, tears falling. "No. I don't want power. I only want to live. I only want to be free." The figure stepped closer, the roots parting before it. "Freedom will not come by running. The soldiers will never stop. The chains on your hands are not only iron. They are a mark, a command. They bind you to their fear." The man glanced at the chains, his grip tightening. "Then we break them," he said firmly. The figure's hood tilted, as if studying him. "You would risk your life for her?" Without hesitation, the man answered, "Yes." The girl's heart twisted painfully at his words. She had expected him to abandon her 100 times. Yet he stood firm, again and again. She whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Why? Do you stay?" He looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because you are not alone anymore." Before she could speak, the forest shuddered again. The soldiers who had escaped shouted from the trees, "Regroup, surround them." Dozens more figures appeared, torches burning, weapons raised. The leader's voice rang out, sharp and merciless. "Seize the monster. Kill the human." The girl's blood turned cold. The cloaked figure raised a hand, the roots rising once more. But even the forest trembled under the weight of so many armed men. The man drew his sword, ready to fight, though his body shook from exhaustion. The girl stared at her glowing hands, fear and strength colliding inside her. The voice of the forest figure echoed again. "Child, the choice is yours now. Hide forever, or awaken and face your fate." Her breath caught, her chest heavy with terror. The soldiers roared as they charged. The man stood ready to protect her with his life, and the girl whispered to herself, "Am I still chained, or will I break them at last?"